Hey guys, welcome back for another video. We got a fun one prepared today. What we'll be doing is we'll be looking at all of our Week 18 NFL matchups, completely breaking down every single game, trying to predict the outcome. Who's going to win, who's going to lose, and what the final score will be. We'll also touch on the best bets, the money lines, the spreads, the over-unders. Make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe. If you have any comments, please drop them below, and I will respond. This is the last week of regular season NFL football. We have the playoffs going on, college football. There's a lot going on in the football world, but it's all coming to an end. But this is when we're going to see our best football played. If you're a football fan, if you're a sports fan, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Every week we go over every NFL game. We go over every single college football game. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel. But let's go ahead and get things started. It is never too early to start looking at our Week 18 games. There's a lot that's up in the air right now. There's a lot of teams that have clinched playoff spots. There's a lot of teams fighting for playoff spots, fighting for seeding in the playoffs currently right now. So we know who the starters are, but there's a lot of starters who might not play Saturday and Sunday. And there's a lot of starters who may only play 1, 2, 3 quarters. They might not play the whole game. So there's a lot of unknowns, but it's never too early to start looking at the matchups, trying to break them down. We'll have another video come out later this week once we know more of who's going to be playing full games on Sunday. But let's kick things off. The very first ones, we have 2 games on Saturday, January 14th, the new year 2025. The first one, 4:30 p.m. on ABC, the 3-13 Cleveland Browns. What an awful season they've had, but at least they're going to get a high draft pick for it. Basically, since the season started, things got off to a bad foot with them. They'll be playing the 11-5 Baltimore Ravens right now. Right now, the Ravens are locked in. They have the number 3 seed. They've been cruising on offense. They've been cruising on defense. Heavy favorites here. Probably not going to see the starters the whole game, but Lamar Jackson does have an MVP case to make. They are 17.5-point favorites. That is the largest spread I've seen this season so far. The over in here is 42 points. They have an 88.6% chance to win this game. Thompson, Robinson, the Browns, they've been struggling on offense the entire season. They don't have a bad roster, but they cannot consistently move the ball. They can't get first downs. They can't punch it in. Right now, they're only averaging 15.5 points a game, throwing for 208.3, running for 97, giving up 25 points a game. And on the other side, you have Baltimore. They are cruising. Lamar Jackson's been putting up video game numbers the whole season. He's closing in on 4,000 passing yards, 39 passing touchdowns, only 4 picks, and he also has 4 rushing touchdowns out of that. He has 43 total touchdowns. Right now, they have the number 3 offense in the NFL. They're averaging 30.2 points a game, throwing for 238.6, running for 185.6. The number 2 rushing team in the NFL, just barely, but very balanced offense, and they're only giving up 21.9 points a game. That number used to be about 25 to 26. Their defense has actually been playing a lot better for probably the last 4 to 5 weeks, so they've gotten that number down. This is when you want to be hot the weeks leading into the playoffs. They are cruising on offense, and we're seeing really good play on the defensive side. But that defense only giving up 81.6 rushing yards per game. They are shutting down the run, forcing you into 3rd and long situations. That is not going to help the Browns in any way whatsoever. They have Ford, they have Judy closing in on 1,200 yards, and on the other side, a loaded offensive roster. Jackson, Derrick Henry closing in on 1,800 yards. Flowers, Andrews, likely way too many weapons, but I do see Jackson getting pulled at some point in the 4th quarter. But the Ravens win this one 27-14. And then our next matchup on ABC at 8 p.m., the 8-8 Cincinnati Bengals. They slowly chip their way back to 500. Now they need to make sure they win this game just to have a shot to make the playoffs. They need a couple other things to fall their way, but they at least have to win to have any shot to make the playoffs. They'll be playing the 10-6 Pittsburgh Steelers. Steelers have already clinched the playoff spots, but depending on the outcome of this game, it will affect who they're playing. Either the Ravens or the Texans. They want to win this game. They would much rather play the Texans than rematch versus the Baltimore Ravens. Right now, you have Cincinnati coming in. They are slight favorites here, 1.5-point favorites. The over in here is 48.5. They have a 47.3% chance to win this game. This game is practically a pick-em, practically a 50-50, but one thing we do know, Cincinnati and that offense, they're going to score no matter who they are playing. Joe Burrow's putting up one of the best, one of the greatest passing seasons in NFL history this season. If they had a better record, he would probably be the MVP frontrunner. Right now, closing in on 4,700 yards, 42 passing touchdowns, 8 picks. He has 2 rushing touchdowns. He has 44 overall touchdowns, but he's had to fight. Every game is a shootout. Their defense is atrocious, but they can score with anyone. The problem is they give up just as many points. And on the other side, you have the Steelers. This is a Tomlin team. They play defense. They run the ball. You're not going to see much flash out of Russell Wilson, but there's going to be a lot of opportunities here to score on Cincinnati, especially on their secondary. Right now, Cincinnati, they're averaging 28.3 points a game, throwing for 274.6, running for 94.1, giving up 26.1 points a game. And Russell Wilson is closing on 2,400 yards, 15 touchdowns, 5 picks. They're averaging 22.7, throwing for 196.6, running for 130.8, giving up 20.5. This is a defense that's going to get after it. They've been lacking, I'd say, the last couple of weeks, not playing their best defense. You want to get things figured out leading into the playoffs. They're going to run the ball. Expect a steady dose of Najee Harris, them keeping the ball on the ground and pound. Play time of possession. Keep the ball out of Joe Burrow's hands. Looking at the playmakers for Cincinnati, Burrow, 4,700 yards. Chase Brown, 10 yards shy of 1,000. Jamar Chase, Higgins, one of the best, if not the best, wide receiver core in the NFL. And for the Steelers, Harris, Pickens. Pickens has missed some time. Pickens has had a lot of issues, but when he's on the field, he's the third and long guy for Russell Wilson. So what's the outcome we have? We have Cincinnati winning a close one. We think it's their offense and their ability to score at will on anyone that's going to make the difference fourth quarter, and they need this win. They win at 28-24. And we'll now move on to our Sunday, January 5th games at 1 p.m. on Fox, the 11-5 Washington Commanders. First off, props to Jaden Daniels. You've seen what one quarterback can do, can completely make a difference for this team. They've already clinched their playoff spot, but obviously if they beat their rival here, they have a chance to affect their seeding and who they're going to be playing. They'll be facing off with the 7-9 Dallas Cowboys. Dallas playing much better for probably the last 5 to 6 weeks. Yes, they lost this past weekend, but without Dak, they've actually been able to move the ball on the ground, buying their defense some breathing time. Right now, you have Washington 3.5-point favorites, one of the best offenses in the NFL, a top 5 offense. The over and here is 45.5. They have a 65.9% chance to win this game. With a win in this matchup, they would clinch the number 6 seed, and they would have to play either the Rams or the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They don't want to play the Philadelphia Eagles. They have something to play for here. It's seeding and who your opponent's going to be in the playoffs. Right now, obviously, for the Cowboys, they've had Cooper Rush playing. He's had a pretty solid season so far, filling in for Dak, much more efficient with the football. They're averaging 20.7 points a game, throwing for 227.1, running for 97.2. They used to be running for about 75 yards a game, so they're running for 22 more yards every game without Dak. But it's that defense giving up 27.8 points a game. That is awful. They had a top 3 defense last season. They have a bottom 3 defense this season. They can't stop anyone. They need their defense to play better. A lot of holes to fill in the offseason. And then looking at Washington, they have Jaden Daniels, who's been putting up great numbers this whole season, especially on the ground the last few games. They're averaging 28.9 points a game, throwing for 219.3. One of the best rushing teams in the NFL, running for 156.6, giving up 23.3. Jaden Daniels, the leading passer, the leading rusher. He's closing in on 3,600 yards. He's closing in on 900 yards on the ground. They also have Brian Thomas Jr., and they have Scary Terry closing in on 1,100 yards. Jaden Daniels has overall 31 total touchdowns, one of the better rookie seasons we've seen in recent history for the NFL. And for Dallas, they have Dowdle, who just passed 1,000 yards. CeeDee Lamb has been banged up. They don't have Dak. They don't have the offense to compete here. But Washington, there's no reason to leave your defense in their fourth quarters. You don't want anyone to get hurt. Do enough to win the game. Pull your starters out. I have Washington winning this one 28-20. Our next game is Fox at 1 p.m. Neither of these teams are playing for the playoffs. Neither of these teams are playing for seeding. They're just basically playing for pride and whose coach is going to get fired first, basically. At 1 p.m. Fox, we have the 4-12 Jacksonville Jaguars coming off a win versus the 7-9 Colts. Right now, the Colts, 5.5-point favorites. Over here is 45.5. They have a 59.5% chance to win this game. Jacksonville, they don't have Trevor Lawrence. They'll be going with Mac Jones. Mac Jones is a serviceable backup. He's not having a great season, but at least they have someone who has a lot of starts under his belt. Colts, they went without Richardson. They went with Flacco this past week. Flacco can obviously open up the offense because he can push the ball vertically down the field. but it really doesn't matter who wins this game record-wise. These teams aren't going anywhere, but they are fighting for draft position, they are fighting for pride, and more than likely, Jacksonville first will be shopping for a new head coach this offseason. Right now, they're averaging 18.6 points a game, throwing for 204.4, running for 101, giving up 25.6 points a game. They have a bottom 10 defense, giving up just under 260 passing yards per game. They have to fix that secondary in the offseason. And for the Colts, they're averaging 21.9, throwing for 194.3, running for 134.6, giving up 25.3 points a game, 231 through the air, 133 on the ground. For Jacksonville, Bigsby, NTN, Brian Thomas Jr. They don't have a bad core there. They will get Trevor Lawrence back next season, but you gotta fix the defense. And for the Colts, Jonathan Taylor closing in on 1,300 yards. He can run it. He can also catch it out the backfield. You have Pierce. You have some weapons there. It's probably going to be Flacco again starting this Sunday. They want to get the win. They have the better team right now, the better quarterback. I have the Colts winning this one 27-21, but this is one of those games that could go either way just because neither team has anything to play for. Who shows up with the most pride to end the season. And then on Fox at 1 p.m., we have the 5-11 New Orleans Saints visiting the 9-7 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Bucs have already clinched the playoff, but what they have riding on the line is being able to host a playoff game at home. That's why they have something to play for here. Saints, very banged up. They've been banged up with Kamara. They've been banged up with Carr, and that's why the Bucs heavy favorites here. 13-point favorites. The over-under is 43.5. They have a 78.2% chance to win this game. Baker Mayfield back to 2023 forms. He's been lighting it up vertically through the air. And there's one other thing that they need to get. There's death, taxes, and Mike Evans getting 1,000 receiving yards every single season. He has the chance to go for his 11th straight 1,000-yard season. He just needs 85 more yards, and he gets there. The Bucs will make sure that he gets his yardage. They want him to have 11 straight 1,000-yard seasons. Very consistent player. Week in, week out, you get the same product. You can count on that guy. He missed a couple games this season, and still he's going to get 1,000 yards. Looking at the Saints, obviously they're probably going to be going with Spencer Rattler. They're averaging 19.9, throwing for 203.8, running for 118.1, giving up 23.2. They don't have a bad roster, but they haven't gotten everyone on the same page every single game. And they're very Alvin Kamara-centric. Catching the ball, running the ball. They need someone else on that offense to step up. And looking at the Bucs, Baker Mayfield closing in on 4,300 yards, 39 passing touchdowns, 15 picks. Had a really solid performance this past Sunday. They have a top 5 offense in the NFL. They're averaging 29.7, throwing for 252.6, running for 147.3, giving up 22.8 points a game. Looking at the offense, they have Irving, they have Evans, they don't have Godwin, but Evans has stepped up massively to fill that role, the go-to guy on third down situations. And for the Saints, leading rusher Kamara, leading pass catcher Kamara. Like I said, way too Kamara-centric, way too reliant on him playing and having a great game. They need to get a second guy to step up. We have the Bucs winning this one 34-17. And then on Fox at 1 p.m., the 4-12 Chicago Bears. Basically, since that Hail Mary loss, they've lost every single game, have not been able to get things back on track. They'll be playing the 11-5 Green Bay Packers. The Packers have clinched the number 7 seed. They are in the playoffs, but as long as Washington Commanders win, they cannot improve their seeding. So there's really nothing here for the Packers to be playing for, just pride. Look for them if this game is in hand to pull their starter second half. Right now, Green Bay 73.8% chance to win this game, 8.5-point favorites. The over in here is 40.5. Chicago, a lot of issues with Chicago. Caleb Williams getting a lot of flack, but he's actually not having a bad season so far. Pretty efficient season. The offensive line has to hold up. He has to get rid of the ball. Don't hold on to it for too long. They have a pretty decent defense. The defense will be with them on the road here. They can at least rely on that. But Green Bay has way too many weapons. They're playing way too good on the offensive side right now. Caleb Williams closing in on 3,400 yards, 19 touchdowns, only 6 picks. Pretty solid rookie season. They're averaging 17.9. Overall, they need to move the ball more consistently on the offense. Throwing for 184.1, running for 103.2, giving up 21.8 points a game. And for Green Bay, Jordan Love missed 2 or 3 games, and still he's closing in on 3,400 yards, 25 touchdowns, 11 picks. He has to keep the turnovers down. You want that offense rolling, leading into the playoffs. They're averaging 27.4 points a game. That's a top 8 offense, throwing for 226.4, running for 144.6, giving up 19.6 points a game. They're one of the more rounded teams in the NFL. They can throw it, They can run it. They can play overall great offense. They can play overall great defense. Right now for Chicago, they have Swift, Moore, Odunze, Allen. Not a bad wide receiver core, but the defense, the season is over for them. They just want to finish with some pride, but they are riding a really long losing streak right now. It's probably going to be hard to motivate them, especially without a head coach. And for Green Bay, Josh Jacobs closing in on 1,300 yards. They have Reed. They have the weapons. They have the pride. They want to make sure that they're rolling leading into the playoffs. We have Green Bay winning this one, pulling their starters early, but having the game in hand. They win it 28-17. And then at 1 p.m. on CBS, the 4-12 Carolina Panthers. For probably the last 5 to 6 weeks since Bryce Young came back as a starter, they've been playing really solid on the offensive side, buying their defense some time. But they still have the worst-ranked defense in the NFL. But at least they can score some points right now. They'll be playing the 8-8 Atlanta Falcons. Right now, the Falcons heavy favorites. 8.5-point favorites. The over is 47.5. They have a 73% chance to win this game. The last 2 games, they've gone with Michael Penix Jr. as a starter. Really good first 2 starts for him. They have a loaded offensive roster. There's no reason to force things. Just give the ball to your playmakers. Let them do what they do. Looking at the Panthers, obviously, Bryce Young playing much, much better since he's back as the starter. Overall, they're averaging 18.6 points a game. Throwing for 182.4. He has 12 touchdowns, 9 picks, 2,200 yards. They are giving up 31 points a game. The worst defense by a long shot. They have to play better because the Falcons are loaded and they can run the ball. Play time of possession. Keep the ball out of your offense's hands. That defense is going to have to get stops here for them to try to play spoiler because the Falcons need to win this game just to have any type of shot to still make the playoffs. They're going to be going with Michael Penix Jr. They're averaging 21.9 points a game, throwing for 234.9, running for 124.5, giving up 23.7 points a game. The Panthers will not have Chuba Hubbard. That is a massive loss. Everyone knows the guy is going to run. He still had 1,200 yards in 15 games. Did not play this past Sunday, probably not playing this weekend. And then looking at the Falcons, they have Robinson, Algiers, London, Mooney, Pitts. So many weapons at running back, wide receiver, tight end. So many guys to spread the ball out to, and they need this game. Look for Penix to have a good performance. Look for the run game to dominate. We have the Falcons winning this one 31-21. And then on CBS at 1 p.m., the 13-3 Buffalo Bills. They've already clinched the number 2 seed. Them winning really doesn't change anything, but they do have one goal here. Well, 2 goals. Potentially get some stats for Josh Allen to get the MVP, and also make sure you get out of this game healthy with all of your starters healthy and intact. They'll be playing the 3-13 Patriots. The Patriots do have one thing to play for. That's losing. They have the number 1 pick potentially locked down here. There's no reason to win this game. Get that top pick overhaul this team. Drake may need some weapons. Right now, the Bills heavy favorite, 78.7% chance to win this game. 3-point favorite. The over-under is 38.5. They only have the Bills as a 3-point favorite because Vegas thinks that those starters are going to get pulled very, very early. Josh Allen putting up great numbers so far. His best season statistically, closing in on 3,800 yards, 28 touchdowns, 6 picks. He has 41 total touchdowns, 13 rushing touchdowns this season. They're throwing the ball. They're running the ball. He's being efficient, taking what the defense gives him. For Drake May, closing in on 2,300 yards, 15 touchdowns, 10 picks. Like I said, he just needs more weapons to spread the ball out to. Buffalo comes in the number 2 offense just behind the Lions. They're averaging 31.8. Throwing for 234.1, running for 131.3, giving up 21.6 points a game. One of the more balanced teams in the NFL. Patriots struggling to consistently move the ball. They're averaging 16.6, throwing for 172.7, running for 118.3, giving up 25.1 points a game. Drake May is going to have to play his best game of the season to have a shot here, but there's no reason in any way whatsoever to win this game. You want to lose. Even if Buffalo pulls their starters second quarter, you still want to make sure you lose to them. For Buffalo, they have Cook, Shakir, Coleman, Cooper, Josh Allen. Make sure all those guys get out of this game healthy. And for the Patriots, Stevenson, Henry. We have Buffalo probably pulling their starters second half, not even playing the second half, but still scoring just enough to get the win. They win this one 24-17. And the next matchup we're going to look at 1 p.m. on CBS, we have the 3-13 Giants. They might be the worst top-to-bottom team in the NFL versus the 13-3 Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles, Hurts has been banged up. There's no reason to play him here. There's no reason to be playing your starters. You have the number 2 seed locked in, locked up. But one thing you do have to play for, getting Saquon Barkley that rushing record. It's not important, but he's 101 yards away from breaking the all-time rushing record. May never get back there a second time. If he was to ever break it, this is the time now. I could see them at least playing him first half, trying to get him that record. Right now, the Eagles, 3-point favorites. The over-under is 38.5. They have an 82.5% chance to win this game. Giants have been shuffling quarterbacks the whole season. They're averaging 16.3 points a game, throwing for 193.1, running for 105.2, giving up 24.7 points a game. Their defense is on the field the entire game. The offense needs to get some first downs, get them a breather. And for the Eagles, they're averaging 27.7, throwing for 183.9, running for 187.3. Probably the most balanced team in the NFL, leading the NFL in rushing. That's why you're going to get a steady dose of Saquon Barkley, probably for just the first half, but they're going to run him a lot, trying to get him that record first half, get him out of there as soon as possible, and they're only giving up 18.1 points a game. They have a top 10 offense. They have a top 3 defense. They can beat you multiple ways. They're playing clean, turnover-free football this season. They are a very, very talented playoff team. For the Giants, they have Tracy Jr., Neighbors, a legit wide receiver, number 1. He just needs a quarterback who can feed him the ball consistently. And the Eagles are loaded. Saquon Barkley, 2,005 yards. They have Brown. They have Smith. Too many weapons, even if they get them pulled. We have the Eagles winning this one, 27-18, and maybe breaking the all-time rushing record. And on CBS at 1 p.m., the 9-7 Houston Texans. A lot of injuries. Diggs, Dell, but we need to see better play out of the offense. They'll be playing the 3-13 Tennessee Titans. Titans are really bad. Too many turnovers on their own side of the field. That's what's doomed them this whole season. But no one is expecting the Texans to play their whole team this entire game. But the Texans need to play their starters here. They need to get the offense figured out. They need to get their offense to being a well-oiled machine. They got to get things back on track. A lot of injuries. They have a lot to figure out still. Tennessee, they're the favorite at home. 1-point favorite. The over here is 38.5. But the Houston has a 53.4% chance to win this one. Stroud, not having the season he had last season, not having a bad year, but we need to see better play. He's closing in on 3,700 yards, 19 touchdowns, 12 picks. They're averaging 21.8. Throwing for 209.9, running for 106.4, giving up 22.4 points a game. For Tennessee, they've been shuffling Rudolph, Levis. It really doesn't matter who they put there. They're not getting first downs, and they're still turning the ball over. They're averaging 18.6, throwing for 193, running for 110.6, giving up 27.3 points a game. They don't give up a lot of yardage on defense, but they have a lot of turnovers on their own side of the field, putting their defense in really bad positions. For Houston, they have Mixon, Collins, who when he's playing, he's a top 3 wide receiver in the NFL. And for Tennessee, Pollard, Ridley. They just are playing for draft picks. They don't really want to win this game. They want a top 3 pick. You need to make sure you lose this game to solidify that. We have Houston pulling off the upset, trying to figure out some things on offense. They win this one 24-20. And then on Fox at 4:25 p.m., the 6-10 San Francisco 49ers. What a fall off they've had from last season. They almost won the Super Bowl last season. They are 6-10 at Week 18. They'll be playing the 7-9 Arizona Cardinals. Neither of these teams are going to be making the playoffs here, but they do have their pride here. San Francisco, a really disappointing season. They cannot wait for the year to end, but at least they can finish on a high note. For the Cardinals, they had their shot to make the playoffs. They lost it. They are playing for pride, and they have the offensive playmakers to squeak this win out, but the 49ers find themselves 1-point favorite. The over here is 46.5. They have a 53.7% chance to win this game. Purdy's going to have to play a clean game here. They almost beat the Lions. They're not having issues moving the ball. It's turnovers and their defense giving up untimely scores. Right now, Purdy, 3,900 yards, 20 touchdowns, 12 picks. And on the other side, Kyler Murray, he's had an up-and-down season. The Cardinals have been up and down the whole season. Good game, bad game. They need to play a complete good game here. Finish the season on a high note. Kyler Murray's closing on 3,700 yards, 17 touchdowns, 11 picks. He also has 5 rushing touchdowns on the ground. He can do things with his legs, extend plays being mobile. He doesn't have to run. He always keeps his eye looking down the field, even when he's running. Right now, the 49ers are averaging 22.8, throwing for 246, running for 126.6, giving up 24.3 points a game. This is not the top 5 defense they had last season. And for the Cardinals, they're averaging 22.1, throwing for 212, running for 143.8, giving up 22.2. These teams are both pretty even. San Francisco, when they have a fully healthy roster, probably the best top-to-bottom roster in the NFL. But that's been the problem. They have not had a fully healthy roster the entire season. Just think of this roster. Purdy, Mason, McCaffrey, Kittle, Debo, Ayuk, Jennings. That's what the roster would look like if it was fully healthy. You're only going to be getting about 60% of those guys on the field this Sunday. And on the other side for the Cardinals, Connor, McBride, Marvin Harrison Jr. The Cardinals can win this game, but I have San Francisco finally pulling one out, scoring just enough to hold on. They win it 28-24. This next one should be a pretty close one on Fox at 4:25 p.m. The 9-7 Seattle Seahawks here versus the 10-6 LA Rams. The Rams have clinched the number 3 seed. They're going to make the playoffs here. You want to make sure no one gets hurt, but they are a offensively focused team. You have to be in tune. You have to be rolling. They want to make sure to at least play their starters so that they're rolling leading into the playoffs. Right now, you have the Rams. They're going to be the underdogs here, though. You have Seattle. They have more to play for. They'll be 3-point favorites. The over here is 39.5, and they have a 42.7% chance to win this game. For Seattle to have a chance to win this game, they're going to have to get the most out of their playmakers. They've been banged up. Kenneth Walker III, he's missed a lot of times this season. Geno Smith, he's been up and down the whole season. A lot of interceptions, 17 touchdowns, 15 picks. He's going to have to play a really clean game here to keep up with the Rams. I don't expect the Rams starters to play the whole game, but they're going to play just enough to get some touches so that they're not rusty leading into the playoffs. Stafford, 3,800 yards, 20 touchdowns, 8 picks. Seattle, they're averaging 21.6, throwing for 238.1, running for 93.8, giving up 21.4 points a game. They've also been up and down the whole season. The Rams, without their weapons, they kind of ran into a little bit of a rusty patch there. Once they got all their offensive weapons back, this is an offense that can keep up with anyone. They are loaded. They can throw it. They can run it. They're averaging 21.4, throwing for 221.8, running for 105.1, giving up 22.3 points a game. Seattle, Kenneth Walker, Smith, DK Metcalf, and for the Rams, Stafford. Williams is 1 yard shy of 1,300. Nakua, Cooper Kupp, Atwell. So many weapons. They're just not going to play the whole game. That's why Seattle's the favorite. But I'm going to go with the Rams still pulling off the win, winning this one 24-20. And on Fox at 4:25 p.m., the 8-8 Miami Dolphins, they have to win this game to keep their playoff hopes alive versus the 4-12 New York Jets. I kind of think from the after-game speeches we had, the Jets have pretty much lost heart. They don't really care. They just want this season to end. Right now, the Dolphins 1.5-point favorites. Over here is 39.5. They have a 46.2% chance to win this game. The big question: is Tua going to play? Are we even going to see him again for the rest of the season? If not, you are going to have Huntley there as the quarterback. Had a pretty good showing this past weekend, but obviously the offense does move a lot better with Tua. I have not been high on Tua since he came out of Alabama. I didn't like his arm. He's way too injury prone. It keeps rearing its head. But Miami, you signed this guy to this massive contract. You are locked in. It is what it is. You're not going to get far in the playoffs if you play football like that. But we know they have a loaded offensive roster. They just always have quarterback questions. But Miami, they have to win this game. Right now, they're averaging 20.3 points a game, throwing for 221.1, running for 103.8, giving up 20.8 points a game. A top 5 rush defense in the NFL. Jets don't like to run the ball. Miami's going to look to make it even more difficult, force Rodgers into third and long situations. Rodgers not having a bad season statistically, gets a lot of blowback, but not having a bad season, closing in on 3,700 yards, 24 touchdowns, 10 picks. They're averaging 19.1. They have to punch it in if they get to the red zone. Force Miami to play catch-up football. They're throwing for 216.1, running for 90.2, giving up 24 points a game. For the Dolphins, a loaded offensive roster. Achin, Mostert, Hill, Waddle, Berrios, but very, very injured. Not just at quarterback. Waddle hasn't played in a couple weeks. They need to get him back on the field as well. And for the Jets, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Lazard, Devontae Adams. They don't have a bad team. I could see the Jets pulling off the win here, upsetting the Dolphins, but I'm going to go with the Dolphins winning. They have something to at least play for. They win this one 23-20. And then on CBS at 4:25 p.m., the 15-1 Kansas City Chiefs, the defending Super Bowl champs, versus the 9-7 Denver Broncos. Andy Reid has already said most of their starters are not going to be playing this game. Denver has to win this game to maintain playoff hopes. Them winning this game pretty much ends the season for a lot of potential playoff teams. They want to win this game. Kansas City really doesn't care. They're already in. They have the number 1 seed. Rest the starters. Make sure you're healthy leading into the playoffs. That's why Denver is a 9.5-point favorite here versus the 15-1 Kansas City Chiefs, because no one expects the Chiefs to play any of their starters. The over here is 38.5. They have a 52.7% chance to win this game. It really doesn't matter who you see on this roster. The starters won't be playing. Kansas City, they're averaging 24.1, throwing for 231.8, running for 110.2, giving up 18 points a game. They have a top 3 overall defense. They get after it. They generate havoc. They generate turnovers. But a lot of those guys aren't going to be playing here. For Denver, you're going to get their best starters. They're going to play everyone. They need to win this game to clinch. Bo Nix, 3,500 yards, 25 touchdowns, 12 picks. Playing within Sean Payton's scheme. Dink and dunk, accurate passes, roll the pocket. Always give him the option to use his mobility. They're averaging 24.2, throwing for 205.6, running for 109.4. They're giving up 19.4 points a game. They also have a top 5 defense. They can get after it. They can generate turnovers. They're going to be able to dominate this game with the Kansas City backups in. We have Denver pulling off the win here. A close one still, but they win it 21-17. And our second to last game on Sunday, don't forget there's no Monday night games here. On CBS at 4:25 p.m., the 10-6 LA Chargers versus the 4-12 Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders probably aren't very good at anything. They don't have a good offense. They don't have a good defense. They don't have a solidified quarterback at the starting position. Chargers, what a first season for Harbaugh. They've already clinched the playoffs, but with the win, they get the number 5 seed. That would be massive. You want the 5 seed because you want to potentially play the Texans. You don't want to have to play the Ravens, so there is something to play for here. This is a Harbaugh team. They play defense. They run the ball. Herbert's really come on strong the second half. I've loved Justin Herbert since he came out of Oregon. The guy can sling it, and the weapons are starting to step up as they get more comfortable in this scheme. Raiders, you just got to score, man. You have to outscore the Chargers, but that's a really good defense. The number 1 NFL defense that you're playing against here. You're just playing for pride. You're definitely not playing for the playoffs. Right now, Herbert, 3,600 yards, 21 touchdowns, only 3 picks. They're averaging 23 points a game, throwing for 205.8, running for 109.1. The number 1 defense scoring-wise, giving up 17.6 points a game. They want to win this game. They want that 5th seed. And for the Raiders, they've been shuffling between O'Connell, Minshew. It really doesn't matter. They're only averaging 18.1, throwing for 223.3. Running for 82.4, the worst rushing team in the NFL. They got to get the run game going so they can open up some play action, help the passing game, keep the turnovers down, and they're giving up 25 points a game. Looking at the playmakers for the Chargers, J.K. Dobbins has been banged up, but Ladd McClunkey's really stepped up big the last 2 months. And for the Raiders, Madison, Bowers closing in on 1,200 yards. That's without a good quarterback. Just think of what this guy can do. They got to draft a quarterback this offseason. We have the Chargers winning this one, even though they might pull their starters out once they take control, but they should control the game the entire 4 quarters. They win it 28-17. The final game might be the best game of the entire 2024 season at 8:20 p.m. NBC, the final Sunday night game, the battle for the number 1 seed. There's a lot lying on this game. This is going to be a really fun one. The 14-2 Vikings versus the 14-2 Detroit Lions. Who's going to get to 15 wins? This game is a pick'em. This game is a 50-50. Could go either way. Right now, the Lions, 3-point favorites. The over here is 56.5. They have a 64.1% chance to win this game. The biggest question for the Lions is that defense. Since week 13, they've been giving up a lot of points. It's not their fault. They are extremely banged up. They might get some starters back for the playoffs. But they got to play on fire on the defense to slow down the Vikings. But we know the Lions, number 1 offense in the NFL. They can score with anyone. But as of right now, Minnesota's probably the more balanced team. They have less injuries. They can score, and they're still playing solid defense. Sam Darnold having a great season so far, lighting things on fire, throwing the ball 4,200 passing yards, 35 touchdowns, only 12 picks. They're averaging 26.4. That's a top 10 offense. Throwing for 243.8, running for 108.4, only giving up 18.8 points a game. That is a top 5 defense in the NFL. They can score. They can slow you down. They're only giving up 88.1 on the grounds. We know the Lions can run the ball. This is strength on strength. Minnesota, one of the best rush defenses in the NFL versus one of the better rushing teams. For Detroit, they have the number 1 offense. It's going to be led by Goff, who's having a great season so far, closing in on 4,400 passing yards, 36 touchdowns, 10 picks, number 1 offense, averaging 33.3 points a game. throwing for 266.1, running for 144.4, giving up 20.8 points a game. That's not bad, but it's a far cry from where they were first half. So many injuries have hurt the defense, but thankfully the offense keeps making up for it. They keep scoring more and more, whatever they need to score to get the win. Looking at the playmakers, both of these teams are loaded. Sam Darnold, Jones, Justin Jefferson, the number one wide receiver in the NFL, just shy of 1,500 yards. And for the Lions, Goff, Gibbs, Montgomery's banged up, but they still have St. Brown. So many weapons up and down the field. They can beat you throwing. They can beat you running. That's why the Lions are the favorite here. They got a lot of sacks, a lot of turnovers here this past weekend. That's what got them the game here versus the 49ers. But can they generate consistent pass rush versus the Vikings in their injured state right now? And can they do it consistently over 4 quarters? Not just for spurts, but consistent pressure on Sam Darnold the whole game. I have that being the deciding factor. I have the Vikings winning a shootout game. They win it 34-30. They get the upset. They get the number 1 seed. But I want to see these teams rematch in the playoffs. So that's our breakdown. That's our early picks for all of our Week 18 games. We will revisit these later this week once we have more news on the injuries and who's going to be sitting. But make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe. If you have any comments, please drop them below, and I will respond. Thank you.